Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Bobby Hams here with my review of Homeland's final season, episode 7. The episode starts off with Saul as he travels with Haqqani to turn himself into Ghulam, with Saul believing that Ghulam will have to behave at Haqqani's trial since the world will be watching. Haqqani tells Saul that Ghulam doesn't care about how the world sees him. Ghulam releases the captured Taliban in the stadium, and Saul implores that he give Haqqani a fair trial or the country will explode. After all, half of the population follow Haqqani. Haqqani is then taken into Afghan custody, and Saul looks very concerned. Back at the CIA station, Mike and Jenna tell Saul that Carrie never got on the plane and shows him photo evidence of Carrie leaving with Gromov. Saul updates Mike on Carrie's resolve to find Max and her contacts with Gromov to further that aim. Mike says he's going to the FBI like he should have done in the first place, and Saul tells him to do what he must, just get her back. We find Carrie and Gromov driving through the Khyber Pass in Pakistan. Carrie tells Gromov that the CIA thinks she's a traitor who passed information to her Russian handler, who in turn helped Haqqani shoot down the helicopter carrying Presidents Warner and Daoud. She adds that the CIA would be sure of that thought after her escape with Gromov. Gromov meets with his contacts and tells Carrie they have a line on Max. He walks off with them and Carrie notices a boy missing a limb. Something about the place looks familiar and she decides to go for a walk. She then finds a cemetery and recalls an aerial strike that she approved of some years ago when she was in charge of Afghanistan and was known as the Drone Queen. Carrie tells Gromov to stop with the mind games, but he says his contacts come from places just like that town because every time Americans bomb civilians, it creates opportunities for the Russians to go in and help rebuild and make friends. He also tells her that it's no coincidence that they're there, but it doesn't mean that he's playing mind games with her. The local imam knows where Max is. Saul confers with the chief of staff about the situation in Afghanistan and where he sees it heading if the judicial system the US has spent hundreds of millions of dollars setting up isn't used. Just as they're working on a way to meet with one of Ghulam's hand-picked judges for the upcoming trial, President Easy walks into the Situation Room and asks that the teleconference continue. Saul and Ryan tell President Easy that they're in possession of signals intercepts that prove Haqqani's innocence. These were the conversations that Max recorded before everything went haywire. In them, Haqqani berates his son Jalal for attacking a government checkpoint and then says there was to be no more violence. The ceasefire happened shortly thereafter. Saul thinks if the judge can hear Haqqani on the recording saying such things, it would go much further in proving he had no intent to continue with Taliban attacks or any involvement in killing the presidents. The problem is that the intercepts are classified. Saul wants to know what can be done about that. President Easy is dead set that Haqqani is responsible and won't declassify the intercepts. He wants the action plan that he asked for. On the road again, Gromov tells Carrie that he didn't put it together that she ordered the strike on the town. She appears to believe him and says that Haqqani was the target at the time. She reveals to him that bombing the wedding party where Haqqani was supposed to be is what made her want to leave the CIA. They reach the place where Max is being kept, and Gromov gets into a negotiation snafu with one of Max's captors. Carrie speaks with Max. He tells her the black box was sold. She's worried about his gunshot wound. It isn't healing well. She wants to go get medicine from the truck, but Max tells her there isn't much time, as a group of Taliban fighters pull up and walk right past Gromov. They drag Max out and into their trucks as Gromov argues with the one guy about who they were and where they were taking Max. Carrie watches on helplessly and then gets upset, but Gromov calms her down. Gromov then tells the guy that if he tells him where Max is being taken, he'll get the rest of the money, otherwise they'll have a problem. At Dover, President Easy tells the chief of staff that he wants his loyalty. The chief of staff expertly dodges giving an answer and instead reassures President Easy that one of them should be in meetings with Saul in the military, or they'll execute plans without either the president or the chief of staff knowing anything. Because it's an easy answer, President Easy goes along with it. He then tries to offer his condolences to the former First Lady Doris, but she cuts him off and tells him not to pretend with her. He dropped a bomb on her husband, then flew an empty casket to the US so he could look presidential, and she is outraged that Ghulam was invited after he spent the last 6 months fighting against her husband. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, Saul visits Qureshi's dad and is ambushed by Tasneem. He tells them that the three of them know Haqqani wasn't responsible for the president's deaths and wants them to do anything they can to slow the trial and oncoming bloodbath. Saul lays the truth bare. He knows Qureshi sees Haqqani as a pawn who's outlived his usefulness to her, and she doesn't care about his death, but he says that she should. He tells him that two things happened in the US when those helicopters went down. An inexperienced president came to power, and the American people were demanding action. The three of them have seen this movie before and know what comes next. War, unless they can work together. Tasneem's dad gives Saul a brief history reminder. When the US needs Pakistan's help, Pakistan is a friend. But any other time, Pakistan's airspace is violated with drones, and the people are belittled and punished with sanctions. Saul tells him that if war starts in Afghanistan once again, the US will be hurt. But the US is also 7,000 miles away. Pakistan will be hurt far worse. Tasneem agrees to help Saul because she doesn't want to watch the world burn. Carrie and Gromov find the new location where Max is probably being held captive. Carrie attempts to call Saul for help in getting an extraction team, but hits his voicemail, as Gromov calmly watches on. She then calls Jenna, who is obviously surprised, and Mike asks who she's with. She ignores him and gives them her coordinates, Max's medical condition, and a description of his guards. Mike tells her she's officially a fugitive, but Carrie hangs up. President Easy and Ghulam meet in the Oval Office, and he tells Ghulam that his advisors are very unhappy about the trial in Kabul. Tasneem and Saul meet with one of Ghulam's judges and explain Haqqani's innocence, but can't offer any evidence as everything is classified. Tasneem shows the judge news of a recent truck explosion in Pakistan and tells the judge that even though she ordered an RPG through Haqqani's windshield in order to stop him from pursuing peace, he still agreed to it with Saul. She is certain Haqqani isn't responsible. The judge is persuaded by Tasneem's admission and says she can order a continuance at the start of the trial and postpone it for maybe 1 week. Saul and Tasneem agree. At Max's new location, Carrie sees Jalal Haqqani arrive. Jalal asks Max if he saw who shot down the helicopters. Max replies with, "What helicopters?" Carrie wonders where the strike team is, but Mike informs her of how reality still works. It takes time to approve and gather a strike force. Then there's a problem of crossing the border to attempt an operation on a location that hasn't been scouted, based on the word of a rogue agent running around with a Russian spy and using said spy's satellite phone with God knows who else listening in on the call. Mike says people will believe otherwise when Carrie turns herself in. Carrie once again ignores him and says that Max put himself in danger at their request. Mike says they're doing everything they can and hangs up. Carrie wants to get closer to see if Max is okay. Gromov says if she gets into trouble, he's leaving her there. In Kabul, Saul tells Haqqani the judge will delay the trial so he can find evidence of Haqqani's innocence. After 40 years of war, Haqqani says, "No one is innocent." The courtroom, which should have been empty, is filled with the family members of people killed by Taliban suicide bombers. Ghulam busts them into the city the night before. The judge who was to issue the continuance doesn't enter the courtroom. Ghulam had her switched out, so the trial will proceed immediately. After a very brief speech by one of the judges, Haqqani is sentenced to death. The courtroom rejoices. Saul is defeated. Saul calls the chief of staff and explains what happened. He must get President Easy to ask for a stay of execution. If Haqqani dies, Afghanistan goes up in flames. The chief of staff, however, is worried about keeping his job by appearing to be loyal to President Easy. Saul is perplexed. Meanwhile, in the Oval Office, President Easy is being swooned by Warhawk for avenging Warner's death so swiftly. The chief of staff says nothing. In the final scene, Carrie sees Jalal getting Max ready for what looks like an execution of his own. Gromov stops her before she can act. This episode of Homeland was very tense and seemed to be creating unlikely alliances, that being Saul working with Tasneem and President Easy being worked by President Ghulam. It also set up the coming disaster that will engulf the country because those who had the power and opportunity to make a difference were silenced. The Afghan judge who Ghulam removed was involuntarily silenced, but Dave, the White House chief of staff, kept his mouth shut on purpose. And I'm still of the mind that Gromov is playing the long game with Carrie. He has just way too many convenient answers ready for her when she asks the question. He knew about Carrie almost drowning her daughter, so I don't believe for a second that he didn't know Carrie was the chief in Kabul when that wedding party was bombed in that Pakistani town that they visited. I don't buy that, not for a millisecond. I think he paid the Taliban to move Max just as he and Carrie got there to that first location, and then again at the new location. to set that whole thing up with the video camera and everything. Literally dangling Max in front of her like a carrot, just far enough beyond her grasp. And it looks like she's falling for it because she is more manic in her obsession in retrieving Max and thinking less rationally about why Gromov is so eager to help her at all. And I really feel bad for Saul. After all of his effort and pleas to prevent war, it looks like he's Cassandra now, able to see the future and warns everybody, but no one believes him. In his case though, no one is willing to take action to avoid it. But we'll see how things continue to go wrong in the next episode of Homeland. Thanks a lot for watching. This is Bobby Hams, signing out.